Hello everybody and welcome to this week's video, which has the emphasis on recovery from a marathon. So you're joining me the week after Manchester Marathon, and I'm going to go over the things that I'll be doing this week to try and promote recovery and get me back into my running routine. So taking you through three different parts of this video. So the first one is those tips and things I'm doing this week to promote the recovery. The second one is I'll go through, now the dust has settled a little bit more, I'm going to take you through sort of some of my thoughts on how the marathon went and go through, not mile by mile, but some key areas of the marathon that I thought were important to mention. So that'll be the second area. And the third area is looking forward. So what now am I going to do now I'm not marathon training, which I seem to have been doing for the past year or so really. So yeah, the kinds of plans that I've got going forward for the rest of the year. So the first thing I looked at really with my recovery is thinking back to when I last did something similar. So the last marathon I did was Frankfurt in October, and I looked at the week that I did after that, and I'd made some honest notes on how I did feel. And then I did actually run on the Wednesday after Frankfurt and the Thursday, just a light jog, but realised that my legs were a little bit heavy. So my first sort of proper run that week post a marathon was 6 days after, on the Saturday. So that sort of gives me an indication of, I think my legs were in a worse state that time. So going into this time, I chose to run on Wednesday first run, and then go back, a bit of light recovery throughout the rest of the week, and just to feel really, because I know you can get caught up on, is my heart rate a bit higher, what are my splits saying, but at the moment I'm running at say a minute a mile slower than my easy run, and I still feel like it's probably harder work than the easy run was a couple of weeks ago. So just tailoring it to how I feel and not getting too caught up on splits and data. So the second point I'd like to mention is making that point of active recovery. So while it's recovery, still keeping it light, but until today that I've been running, I wanted to do a few things that would sort of promote my recovery faster. So what I first did was Monday morning, I got up and got down my swimming baths and went for a light swim. It's really good to just get in water. Felt good on my muscles, on my heavy legs. You don't really have to use your legs much swimming anyway, it's mostly in the arms and back, so it was good to have a little light swim there on the Monday morning. Another thing I've been doing is just getting up and walking about. My job does involve me sat down most of the day, so it is just making an effort to keep getting up. Maybe set a timer on your phone just to say get up and go for a little stretch and a walk, and then just getting out for a couple of walks as well. So Monday night I went for a walk with Robbie and we chatted through how the marathon went, and maybe things we'd do differently next time and what his plans were going forward. So it's nice to just have a catch up and promote that little bit of active recovery. So doing a bit of walking. The other thing I've been doing is a little bit of yoga. So I'm not very flexible myself, and that's probably why I put off doing yoga, but whilst I'm not running, it does give me a focus on an area I can improve on, because to be honest, the more flexible you are, the better form you're going to be when you're running. So that is something that can promote recovery but can also help me in a technique way as well. And the final thing I'd like to mention on what I'm doing this week, and probably a little bit outside of running, because you realise when you're in the marathon block, I've been training probably since January, running every night of the week pretty much, and then weekends probably both days unless something was on. So you have made a lot of sacrifices through maybe not seeing your friends, not seeing your family as much, so it's a good time at the end of a marathon block, when you have that time back again, to try and arrange to catch up with these friends and obviously tell them all how your marathon went. They'll be loving to know about it, probably for about 10 minutes until you start boring them with Strava splits and Boston qualifier times and all that nonsense. But yeah, it's a good idea to get caught up with your friends again and just do a few normal things that you might have been sacrificing throughout that marathon block. So I know tomorrow night on Thursday we've got a catch up with the running lads, so we're keen to ask me and Robbie how the marathon went, and we'll catch up with them of how their running's gone as well. So probably wash down by a couple of beers as well, so that'll be nice to have a catch up and yeah, have some good food and drink there. So it's now time for a few thoughts. Now I've had the chance to reflect on race day and how the marathon went. So going into the marathon, I did feel like I prepared really well. I got a solid training block in, and the taper week probably started 2 weeks out, really dropping down to 40 miles and then 20 miles in the week of the race day. So I felt that I was really well prepared. I'd fueled well, been sleeping. You never sleep totally well in marathon week, but I've been sleeping pretty well going up to a race and didn't feel too tired on the start line. So everything was looking good going into it. We then set off on the first sort of 10k of the marathon, and you loop into the city and back, and you come back to the start line at about 10k. So you always feel pretty good at the start. I do anyway in a marathon, but you've got to watch out that you might not feel so good in maybe 10-20 minutes time, and you never know when that's going to kick in. So I always go out maybe a little bit slower than what feels like a sort of race pace, because you are running for sort of close to 3 hours there. So looking back, we probably did set off a little bit too quick, and we got through halfway in about 125, 126-ish, which, as I said, was tracking for like a 250, 251, where in reality we planned to go through halfway in around 127, 128, and then keep that pace until 20 miles. And if we felt good, then kick down and try and get under the 255 mark. So actually going through halfway a little bit up on this. I was feeling a little bit tired at halfway. I sweat quite a lot anyway. I was feeling a bit overheated, even though it was only like 10 degrees, perfect conditions for marathon running. So I did feel that I'd maybe pushed it a little bit too hard going through into halfway. But something that doesn't really happen in a race for me, if I have pushed it hard, I tend to just fade and fade until I get close to the finish, and then my splits will fall off a cliff. Really, it's happened maybe 2 or 3 times before in marathons, but this time I made a conscious decision just to drop back a little bit off the group that we'd been sucked along with. So I did drop to about 640 pace from sort of 625, 630s, and I think that just enabled me to catch a bit of a breath for 2 or 3 miles and recover. And at that point I then did have Robbie fall back to me, and then he was running around that 640, 650 pace at say 16, 17 miles. And then at the 16, 17 mile point, that's when there's a couple of hills in the race as well. So Manchester is very flat for a marathon, but it does have a couple of little kickers. There's a flyover bridge around that point, and then you run up into a little loop around Altrincham, and there's quite a bit of a hill in that point, which I knew about from doing it previously. I think it probably did catch a few people out there. So it's a little hill around that 17, 18, and then we drop down the rest of that hill and come back over that same flyover. So 3 hills within about 2 miles there. Probably does affect your splits and your rhythm a little bit. So after that point, that was when Robbie did start to slip off a little bit, and because we were well up on the splits, I was sort of trying to keep him going, encouraging him, trying to do a bit of maths in my head that, oh, we only need like 7:30 pace for the last 8 miles, and you're going to do it. You're going to get under 3. But at that point, when I don't know, you've been dropping from 6:30 to sort of 6:40, 6:50 a mile, there's a reason you drop the pace back, and it's because you're tired and things are starting to go wrong. So he did then drop back to sort of 7:10s, 7:30s before a couple of stops around that 19-mile point. So he did then say to me to carry on at that point when we stopped a couple of times, and I then set about. I got to 20 miles and thought, right, I'm feeling really good today. I'm in a really good position in the marathon, that even if I keep up this pace, I'll probably be on about 2:55, which would be a 2-minute PB. But I thought, well, why not kick down a bit and see. I was feeling fresh. Last 10k, I thought I'll try and run that last 10k in 40 minutes, and that'll be somewhere in the low 250s, which would be a really comfortable, good for age time for London. So I did, and mile 21 and 22 I did 6:20 miles, and then sort of held 6:30ish until the end. And then once you got on that, the final turn for the sprint finish, I did put a little bit into that sprint finish and dropped a low 6 for that half a mile. So yeah, all in all, I was really pleased with that. Ended up with 2:53.13, which is nearly 7 minutes under my good for age time now. So will lead me into the next segment of the video in terms of future plans. So where does that leave me in terms of training and goals for the rest of the year now? So it does put me in a really good position that I got that 2:53, which is a good for age time for getting into London Marathon, which I'll be applying for the ballot when it comes around. So because of a set time you get, so split across men and women and different age groups, if you get a certain time you can enter the good for age ballot for London, which I've been able to for the past few years. But unfortunately, when I've entered with only having, say, a 2:58 or a 2:57 in the recent case, they cut these times depending on demand. So it was cut by sort of 3.5 minutes last year, so I'd have needed like a 2:56ish to get in. So I'm confident this year I can get in off that 2:53 and be on the start line for London in April, which it'll be nice to get there on merit. Feel like the hard work's paid off to get there, and yeah, we'll be able to train for that next year from sort of January time and build up towards the marathon focus next April. So the rest of the year I can really try and kick down the times in the shorter distances, and that's what I'm going to try and do. So I know my 5k needs a bit of work. Currently my PB is 17:57 from last summer, but I know I could probably, with the right sort of training, take this down into the lower 17 minutes and maybe even break that 17-minute mark if I do really focus on it and make it a priority. So I'm going to do this by doing a lot of track training, getting a few more sessions in, maybe reducing my training mileage for the week and focusing on intensity and that speed. So I will be dropping down, maybe even trying some 1500 or 3k races on the track to get my legs turning over quicker, to just give me confidence running at, say, that mid 5-minute mile pace that I'll probably need to break 17 minutes. So yeah, that's a priority, and then I think this will translate to a quicker 10k, a quicker half, so I can target trying to tick them off towards the back end of the year. So that's the plan anyway, and I'll be sure to document it and how it goes. May even do a little mini series again like I did for the marathon, of how I'm going to be training for, say, these track races for 5k, for 10k and a half. So we'll see you in the next one.